We've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people.
On Capitol Hill this morning, senators will be hearing directly from the Navy admiral who ordered a strike on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean. Admiral Frank Bradley will answer questions behind closed doors, classified from members of the Armed Services Committee. This afternoon, he'll also brief members of the Intelligence Committee about the incident. Both President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth have defended Admiral Bradley. Some lawmakers, however, are questioning whether the strike on the drug trafficking boats violated international law by killing survivors of the initial attack. Joining us now, Captain Armin Kurdian, retired Navy pilot, Franklin Rosenblatt, professor at Mississippi College School of Law, specializing in military law, and president of the National Institute of Military Justice, also foreign affairs expert Michael Szanto. Thank you, Szanto. Thank you each for being here. Captain, let me start with you. What questions would you want to hear asked of the Admiral this morning, and how much will he be able to share in this classified environment?
Certainly. Good morning, Marty. One of the questions I would like to know is whether there are any standing orders in terms of capturing survivors or capturing some of these boats in order to gather intelligence. And also, I would like to know as to perhaps what is the sentiment in terms of going after targets over land, which I am not currently in favor of. However, the effects, I think, are pretty clear in the sense that the number of boats that are being reported that are coming out of Venezuela has really slowed to a trickle. And let's remember, these boats are not just carrying drugs to the United States, but also ferrying drugs to Europe, which means they're going to have to start continuing to increase their transport over land through customs and border entry. So we need to increase our enforcement through that means.
Mr. Rosenblatt, can you talk about the legality question, not only on the initial strike, but what is in question is the second strike that then killed the surviving members? What stands out to you about what's been made public?
Well, the focus on the second strike assumes that we're looking at this through a law of war framework. And most legal experts are questioning that. And the law of war does give some license for the use of violence when there is an actual armed conflict. In this case, however, the argument that this is a non-international armed conflict has a lot of weaknesses, including that there's no armed group that was organized. So the armed part and the conflict part are both at issue. So therefore, the international humanitarian law would not apply. And this is a regular framework of U.S. statutes and international human rights law. However, even in a law of armed conflict framework, even if we were at war, that second strike would be a violation of our standards. We've learned a lot from the global war on terrorism, including the necessity of Common Article 3, that there are no persons who do not enjoy any protections of the law.
Mr. Szanto, I want to bring you in here, and I also want to share with folks at home what the president had to say about potential future strikes.
The land is much easier. It's much easier. And we know the routes they take. We know everything about them. We know where they live. We know where the bad ones live. And we're going to start that very soon, too.
What's your read, Mr. Szanto, on the situation, and also what the president said there, that land strikes are much easier?
Well, overall, the policy is incoherent because you see the president just pardoning a huge drug deal, or just basically yesterday. And when you think about it, drug dealing is not even a capital crime in this country. And the president and secretary of defense have basically made themselves judge, jury, and executioner. And we do not want to give license to countries like China, Russia, North Korea, Iran to start executing people on ships. So the strategy doesn't make sense. There is no precedent in the last 100 years of American history to target civilians who are drug dealers. And unfortunately, so far, probably not even very big drug dealers, certainly not ones that U.S. prosecutors would really go after with big penalties in terms of prison time even.
Captain Kurdian, let me bring you in one more time. In an effort for transparency, what is the obligation of the administration on this matter?
I would want to know where the intelligence is coming from and what their verification is to understand that these boats are actually carrying drugs. And I would venture to guess that they have a pretty solid chain because it's easier to sort of trace back to a point of origin, and then from that point you can follow in the opposite direction drugs as they get to the water and then are loading up on these boats. One of the problems with capturing these boats and gathering intelligence has always been once you approach them, they'll throw the drugs overboard, and then they'll just say, "Oh, these were just bags of flour, bags of sugar, and we were afraid," kind of thing. Now you can continue to go down that path, if you will, but I would definitely want to know how the intelligence is being used, and I would want to know if I don't think, in an open session, you can't talk about human intelligence. You don't want to give away those sources and methods. But at the same time, this is very critical. And I think the impact and the efficacy of what is transpiring also can't be questioned.
And until we have any of that, whether it's revealed in a classified briefing or more publicly, Mr. Rosenblatt, what do you think this does to influence future strikes?
Well, I think in the bigger picture, we do have a drug scourge. This is a difficult problem, and it must be dealt with international cooperation. One of the things, the legacies of this that's most concerning is that many of the countries that we have relied upon for intelligence sharing and extradition agreements and other cooperation, including Colombia, Mexico, Canada, the UK, and European countries, have ceased cooperating with us. They don't want to be a part of any atrocities, and that's going to be a big long-term setback to our anti-drug efforts.
Mr. Szanto, let me give you the final word here. What do you believe happens next and the public's view as this plays out in Washington?
Well, the double strike was kind of the last straw for many people because just flagrant violation of international law and our standards. The best plus of this would be deterrence. But if, and it's very possible that it is the case, that these are not really, really big drug dealers, the really, really drug dealers are actually feeling more emboldened because we're hitting drug dealers, hopefully, but not even the right ones. So I think that this policy needs to be reduced or eliminated, and we need to have a more coherent strategy. If, for example, the goal is restore democracy, regime change in Venezuela, they're hitting the wrong target for that too. So I think a more thought out policy that doesn't seek to maximize death tolls of people who might, in many cases, just be very sad stories drawn in by the really bad drug dealers who we might not even really be hitting with these operations.
Appreciate each of your perspectives. Thank you so much, Captain Armen Kurdian, Franklin Rosenblatt, and Michael Szanto.
Thank you.